Hey everybody, welcome to Local Business Hacks Podcast. I'm your host, Carl Case, and I'm on a mission to help you. Every week, we're going to be talking to local business owners and experts to get their best tips, tricks, and hacks to grow your business. This show is designed to teach you, inspire you, and motivate you to take massive action and start to build your future-proof business. Whether you're just starting off or you're taking your existing business to the next level, this episode is for you. So let's get started. Hey, local business hackers. I'm your host, Director of Global Business Development, joined today by a woman that not only lives her life as a 10 out of 10, but has created a brand called The 10 Spot. Kristen Gale, founder and CEO of The 10 Spot. Kristen, I am so blessed to have you on our show.
Hello. That was such a lovely intro. I feel like there should have been dramatic music playing in the background. Can you just add that in post?
Music.
Thank you. Thank you. Very delighted to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Kristen, talk to our listeners about this journey that brought you to open The 10 Spot.
Oh, listeners, let me tell you. So I actually started The 10 Spot when I was 24 years old. I had just been fired for the second time. Imagine 24 and having two of those under your belt already. And in fact, one of them was from an unpaid internship. So it was abundantly clear that I was not employee material. I had great jobs and I just hated them because I hated sort of all of the stuff that went along with not being your own boss, like having to show up, at a certain time every day and do the same thing every day. And so I decided at that point that instead of just going to look for another job that probably wasn't even as good as the job I had had before, because it was a pretty dreamy job, that I would do the thing that I'd been wanting to do since I was a kid, which was to start my own business. My dad was an entrepreneur, and he always said to us kids, do whatever you want in life, as long as you turn it into a business somehow. And it's funny because I didn't hearing that, I was just oh, you're an entrepreneur. So, you think that this is the best way to do it. And I thought it was more about the money aspect of things, which to that point, I like that entrepreneurship is more of this meritocratic system where, you have your own agency over how much you're going to make. But what I later realized was that it was really the key to having this life that you love, that's about creativity and, purpose and meaning and feeling more fulfilled. So I'm very grateful that he sort of forced us into thinking this way. And so, I was at this kind of what do I do? Do I just go back and try to get another job and probably, hate that too, and maybe get fired for a third time? Or do I try to come up with a great business idea on the spot? And so that's what I did. It was a Friday that I got fired. The Sunday night, I went for a brainstorming sesh. I love a good brainstorming sesh with a friend of mine. We came up with the idea of we came up with the idea of hey, I want to, have a little cute storefront. So that was first one, what kind of business? It's going to be a bricks and mortar storefront. Didn't actually know the terminology of bricks and mortar at the time, but I was I want a cute little store and I can have my Starbucks and come in and turn on the lights and greet my customers. And then when I had lived in New York City, I had lived above a nail bar. It was not a nice one at all. It was pretty skeevy. But because I lived above it, I saw that it was busy all the time. So morning busy, afternoon busy, into the evening it was busy. And I was what if I did that, but just not totally disgusting, and had great hygiene standards and, had the guest care elements of the higher end spa market, but had that more chill vibe. And then also I could make it a social spa-ish experience. Because as a young 20-something, I found that there wasn't a lot of things for me to do. I wasn't a sporty person, so I didn't have, and I wanted something to do with girlfriends. And there was sort of go shopping, which I'm not a big shopping person, or go, have brunch or dinner or lunch or, drinks. And that was kind of the only thing. And I thought this could be that other thing to do with your gal pals, go for brunch and then, get your manis and petties and have a cocktail.
Well,
so that's what I did.
And today.
So then open that up within a couple of months. It got a lot of press and sort of, I realized that this thing that I thought was going to be this very niche concept of people that don't want this and don't want, the higher end, then they'll come to me. It ended up being just, the mass market of women And we really focused on services that people would be getting on the regular. So monthly, sort of things that were considered more maintenance services. So waxing, manis, pedis, and a couple at the beginning, we didn't do a lot of skin services. We definitely do now because that's more on trend with what people want. Did that for a couple of years, opened up a couple more corporate stores, and then realized that it was pretty lonely being an entrepreneur. And I found that my friend group, they weren't. And so I was lonesome because my days were random and fun and fluctuated. And I just had, different free time than people did, but then also chained to my phone and like, I'm never off. And there's always like anxiety, coming up when somebody's calling or texting. And then also just that nobody had the same problems that I did. Nobody was dealing with like, oh God, this staff member did this, or like this, I've got to, we've got, whatever the issues were at the time. I didn't have anybody to relate to. And so by this time I got married, and my husband at the time, spoiler alert, I did get divorced. He had said, why don't you go into franchising? And I had, of course, known about franchising in terms of like, oh, McDonald's and Burger King are franchises, but I didn't actually know anything about the business structure of it. And so he had a friend of his that owned a bunch of car stars. And so we met with him and he kind of explained it. And I was like, oh, this is easy. I mean, all I have to do is like get a franchise agreement. Amazing. So I did the franchise agreement and started selling them. And then we actually sold 2 at the same time, like within a month of each other. And so I had 2 brand new franchisees at the exact same time and learned very quickly that it is not as easy as just, opening up corporate stores and instead of a manager, I've got a franchise partner, but that I had actually created a new business model entirely that I had nothing prepared for, like did not understand the inner workings of it. So it was a very quick learning curve to get myself up to speed and even build a company around it. Like I had no employees of this brand new company. It was just me. So it took some very first couple of franchise partners and their wonderful patience and forgiveness and openness to get me to a place where we are now. So now we've got close to 50 locations that are open and operational. And then another 20 something agreements in place of people looking for locations and, build out process and that kind of thing. So it's been a ride. It's 17 years building it.
Well, way to show your age. Congratulations
Thank
on
you.
taking your dad's advice and ex-husband, but ultimately trusting your gut, being like, hey, I know that people need this. Let's try it. And obviously proof of concept worked. Now you're not only in the US, but in Canada, and hopefully some of our listeners will help you open some more territories as well.
I hope so. Yeah, it's exciting. Yeah, it's very exciting stuff because we have so much opportunity in the United States. So the brand is from Canada, and we the bulk of our locations are here, but we've got a bunch popping up in the United States. And it's so great because we have so much territory. This is kind of the thing with franchising in the US in particular, because any franchisor that's established, meaning they've like made all the mistakes and gotten to a business model that they didn't really know was a new business model and had to start and build that up and really learn what franchising truly is, that it's a relationship business. They tend to not have a ton of territory because they're established and they've been around forever. And in order to learn what to do, you've done it a lot of times. And when anybody that does have a lot of territory is, in the brand new baby franchisor stage, which means they're probably going to make a lot of, they're going to have a lot of growing pains and some pain points. So we're unique in that in entering the market, we've got like 15 years of franchising under our belt, 17 years in the industry, and then quite a few available territories. So it's exciting for us.
So head to the 10spot.com, check out what's available, and schedule a call with you and the team to find more.
Exactly. I do all the intro calls because I love, I'm obsessed with the 10 spot and franchising and the relationship. And I want to make sure that the people that we're awarding our locations to are going to be a great fit because it's going to be their new lives. And I want them to be just as jacked up and excited about this as we all are. And so it's very important for me that we have that shared purpose and sort of alignment on our values as well. So 10spot.com.
10spot.com, people. Let's transition a little bit. Obviously, 17 years in this space and being a fired unpaid intern and working at another corporation before that. You've learned some lessons along the way. So, Kristen, tell us your stories. We're here for them.
Oh, yeah. So one of the hacks, do you want me to tell the hack first or tell the story and then just like, bam, hit it with the hack?
Tell us the story and then let
Okay.
us. Let's.
So when I was starting the first location, I had the idea on the Sunday night, rode my little bike home, downloaded, I knew that I would need money. So I knew that I was going to have the storefront. I knew the street, but I was like, and I knew the concept, knew that I needed money. When I was like, well, I'm going to get money from a bank. That's where you get them from. So I went and was like, how do you get a loan? So I downloaded the business plan template and I filled it out, like obsessively filled it out, like till 6 a.m. And my background was in graphic design. So I also, of course, like did the logos and like service menu mock-ups. And like, it was so gorgeous. I like printed it out, this gorgeous paper. I put it in a silver box. I don't know why. Like, I don't know what I was thinking when I like that. If I'm presenting this to the bank, like it needs to be so professional and designy and sleek. And so I've like done some product packaging stuff before. So I was like, this is the same thing. So I ended up dropping it off to the bank and then ended up pounding the pavement and finding a space a couple days later, ended up signing a 5-year lease with no financing secured. But thank God it did work out. But my banker, and he wasn't a commercial banker because I didn't actually know that there was a difference between commercial and personal bankers at the time. But this guy had just set up my RRSP, my savings account, the year earlier. And so I brought it into him and I was like, hey, like, I've got this like great business idea. Here's my thing. So he's like, great, I'm so excited to read it. So then he calls me a couple days later. He's like, hey, gorgeous business plan. I mean, this silver box is beautiful. However, you didn't put any financial projections in here. Sorry, it was actually, I think it was missing like the balance sheet or something. Like I kind of like hobbled together something for the finance section, but it was certainly not complete. And I knew it was not complete. And so I'm like, Dave, yeah, I know. I like don't have any idea how to do that. Do you think you could do them for me? And he said yes. Now, I know that this is not normal. And I think the only reason why this actually ended up coming about was because the year earlier when I had got my RRSP and my savings thing all together, I had to call him for something. And so I had called him in the car. This is back when you could actually talk on your cell phones in the car, threw the phone onto the passenger side seat, thought I hung up, didn't, and ended up singing like at the top of my lungs in my most like truest performance of my life, an entire Beyonce song. And it was like left on his voicemail. So he ended up calling me and we shared this humiliation. So I feel like he was kind of like writing the scales of the planet. And so he helped me out and did some of my financials for me in my business plan. Ended up getting the loan, of course, with his help. But I would say that is my first hack, which is the answer is always no, unless you ask. So should I have not asked, hey, can you just do them for me? Why would you ever even think that somebody would do something like that for you? You'll be surprised.
Lead with authenticity too.
Yeah, fair, right? Yes.
Yeah, and the link to Kristen's Beyonce song will be in the bottom of the comments.
You know what? I can just actually like sing it at the end, like when we wrap. I'll just do it here, so you actually have the footage as well.
Even a better reason to listen to the rest of this podcast, aside for the future hacks coming. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. So that one for sure has always stuck out. Also from my dad. And don't think I didn't use that against him all growing up in my childhood. I was like, hey, I know it's far-fetched, but the answer is no unless I didn't ask. So, or unless I asked, yeah.
I love that. You have more hacks for us?
I don't know if it's a hack, but I definitely know that my business really shifted when I decided to get strategic about the company, because up until that, and I don't think you can actually do that from the beginning. I think it's nice to think that you can, but in that whole world of you don't know what you don't know, you're scrambling, it's reactive. And then once you sort of get a handle on things and you're like, okay, it's not like quite reactive, it's more proactive, but it's still like you're just like a couple of steps ahead of things. And it's not until you get to this place where like things are rocking and rolling where you can then be more strategic. I was given a book called Mastering the Rockefeller Habits by Vern Harnish. And it was like, so I don't know. It was just like, it was life-changing because I actually then applied a bunch of these things to my life. But it started with really coming up with the purpose and the core values of your company. And what's funny is that I had done this. Like when I went back to be like, oh, let's put these in the beginning of the management manuals. Like we actually made these and I made them up one day at the very beginning of the business. And I didn't even remember that I did it. So certainly these weren't being lived and used and they weren't actually true to who we really were and who we had become. Because I think you also need to live in your business and live in your company for a while to see like what are the values that we're really good at, and then what are the values that we don't want to have that maybe are popping up that aren't the things that we want or things that you had to let people go over. And so when we then really got clear on why are we here, because it's also like it's manis and petties and waxing vajayjay hair. Like it's not rocket science, it's not saving lives. And so how do we make it so that it's not just, something that isn't meaningful? Because it isn't, it is meaningful. So how do we actually articulate the value of what we're providing to people and the meaning of what we're doing for people? And so it took a lot of wordsmithing and trying things on and just trying to see what fit until we really landed on, oh, we actually, and by the way, when this came out and because it has a 10 in it, I almost died because it was just like, baby Jesus coming down and whispering his little magic into things and making it all go together. But it was like, we exist to make everyone feel like a 10. And it's not even to make them look like a 10, because what people look like, that's not what we're concerned with. But it's when you get put together and polished, you end up feeling better about yourself. You end up feeling more confident. And confident people kick ass and take names and they live their best lives ever. They live their life at a 10. And that doing that and really coming to that revelation, because it is what we did already, but just sort of being able to name it, then we were able to instill that into our staff too, right? Because it's like, it's about them knowing the meaning and value and impact that they have on people's lives and knowing that they're not laying bricks, or building a wall, they're building a cathedral. And so that's the thing that really kind of set us apart. And because of that, it then sets us apart from our competition as well. So, knowing that the staff feel like they're in here making a difference, that they have meaning and that we know that, and that we're treating them with the reverence that their skill and expertise should have, that it makes a difference in terms of the way that we lead from a head office, that our franchise partners lead in their bars, and that the actual service providers, our GCs and our aesthetic experts, that they then instill into our customers and they leave having that feeling as well. So
Ripple effect.
Do your core values and purpose.
And
Exercises.
Yeah, and redo them, relook at them. When you start and have one location with 100 customers and then you grow to 1,000 customers, it's a big difference what you're supporting and who you're supporting.
Exactly. And making them be lived, like not just writing them out one time and putting them in your management manual and then forgot you even did them, but just how do you implement them so that it's like at every single touch point of the business? So like you hire by them, like they're listed in our job descriptions. Like we talk about what each of them means before we hire somebody. I was saying even it's the reason why I do the first couple of calls with new franchise partners is I want to make sure that you're about making people feel like that you think that people should be living their best lives. And this is this wonderful, cute, fun way that we can contribute to that bigger purpose is super, super important. And then celebrating them. And I think actually the main thing is like upholding them, because it's so much worse to say that you're about something and then let people behave or have yourself behave with that toxic kind of thing than it is just to pretend like we don't have them at all.
Yep. Slow to hire, quick to fire.
Exactamundo. Yeah.
Definite keys to success, which I preach all the time. So anyone listening's definitely heard that. But I think
good. Yeah.
I think reevaluating not only your core values, but your whole processes all the time. especially
Yes.
as a franchisor. Your business is shifting consistently. You just opened the rest of North America. Things are going to change.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I have a business coach. Her name's Kelly McDougall. She's like a huge bigwig here in Canada. And her thing is, she's like, Kristen, you reserve the right to be smarter today than you were yesterday. And I'm like, oh, you're right. I can be better today and I can change things and evolve. So,
Hell yeah, you can.
yeah.
All right, Kristen. So, badass mom, CEO, founder, out of nowhere. Let's talk about, you're an avid reader. Obviously, you talked about a book about the Rockefellers already. What have
Yeah.
been some of your keys to success as far as reading or implementing things that you've learned throughout this entrepreneurial journey?
Oh, I have two. Okay. So, first of all, for reading, I burn through books because I'm an Audible subscriber. For me, I find it's more difficult to carve out time to read. I'm a big fan of stealing time. So whenever I can like steal time and like I'm driving in the car, I will be listening to my audiobook. I will be grocery shopping it, I'm listening. Shower, I'm listening. Doing my makeup, I'm listening. Cooking, I'm listening. And so I find that there's so much time that you're kind of doing these repetitive things that don't require your full attention, but that you can be learning. Same thing for podcasts. Anytime that I can be like taking in more information, I love that. And then I do a lot of courses. I am a big, let's do a course, let's do a weekend. My favorites are weekend retreats where you're just like dive bombing in. There's other super geeks there that are so excited to learn about the same stuff that you are. And then I find that tricky because I basically transcribe everything that is going on. I just got back from a speakers boot camp and I'm sure that they were like, who is this like biatch that is like nonstop sending emails and the thing? And I'm like, I'm not. And I actually transcribe almost everything. I'm like taking a photo of the screens. Then I'm like, okay, if he's asked us to, do something, I've put it in a special little box. So it's like, I'll come back to it to fill it out. I have to see it. I have to hear it, and then I actually have to do it, and I have to write it out and be able to get so good with the material that I can actually teach it to someone, which then I oftentimes do because I get really excited and I have to tell everybody about, oh, this is something you should do. So yeah, it's on all angles. It's pretty intense.
I love that. I think the cliche is that if you've learned it well enough, then you can teach it, or that once you teach it, solidified
But
that
I've
you.
done so many books for business stuff. One of my favorites is The Four Disciplines of Execution. And I read this book. And then I audibled it. And then I was like, oh, I got to actually get the hard copy. And then I went through and I made a full PowerPoint presentation for the team on what this book is, used examples, had the quote slides up. And then we use it in our onboarding because this is such a powerful methodology for execution that this is the framework that we want to be following. So
Amazing. Always
yeah,
taking
super
opportunity
geek.
to educate yourself.
Super geekatron. Yeah, I like when I die and go to heaven, it's gonna be me like at a cute cafe with my headphones on, just like typing, just making manuals and protocols and canvaing stuff, slideshows, just anything on the computer I can do. That's my heaven.
I love it. We'll talk about mine offline. It's a little different.
Perfect.
Actually, I can share it here. For those of you that know me, I
Yeah.
own animal shelters all over the world. So my heaven table, I actually have a picture of it in my personal community group, and it is like every dog that I've ever saved at the dinner table,
No.
speaking to me in English, saying like, Carl, you can now have conversations with us now that you've made it here. Uh,
Oh my goodness. That's so
yeah.
cute. That's
I'm
a
not in a
good.
rush for it, but I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. I love it.
Kristen, I would love to know, being a CEO and founder, how do you find yourself delegating roles and figuring out what you should spend time on and what you shouldn't?
Mm. Well, don't spend any time on stuff you're not good at. Just scrappity ding dongaroo that. So the very first thing I did after I dropped off my business plan to the bank and then I paid my first and last month's rent, I was like, I'm gonna not remember all of the money I've spent very quickly. So I need to hire a bookkeeper. And actually, the last place that I'd worked at, there was a woman that did bookkeeping and she was just part-time. So I called her up and I was like, hey, It's me. Do you remember me? Also, can you come and work for me? Like, just, I don't know how many hours you need, but I know this is gonna get out of control really quickly. And I am not good with the financial aspect of things. So that I knew right away. And then as I actually got into operating the business, I was like, oh, I'm not a good manager either. Who knew I would hate doing the same thing all the time and dealing with the staffing issues and dealing with some of the customer issues. And so I ended up firing myself and then bringing in a manager as well. And then what I was able to then do was focus on the stuff that I was good at, which was that creative stuff of like creating manuals, creating marketing materials, the system. Like I was actually good at creating what later became the franchise system, the proprietary information. I didn't know it at the time. I just thought I was like, well, I'm not needed here. And what else am I going to do with my time? Why don't I just make some manuals? And so that for sure was for me is like, do the thing that you're great at and then try to outsource. And that's tough when you're first getting started for sure, because you can't afford that thing. So it's a hierarchy of I'm really shit at this. That like this is even impossible for me to do. That's the one I'm going to outsource first and then go until you hire yourself out of a job, which is where I am now. And I think to your part A or the part B of your question is like, how do you know when to do that? And it's like, I look for people that are similar to me from a perspective of, I want them to be as excited about what I'm doing and as passionate and kind of have the same work ethic, but then be very different. Like I'm an emotional person. I need them to be rational. I want them to take in the information and, be strategic about stuff. And so for me, it's been about finding the people that are complementary, that we're on the same train, but we're doing different jobs on it.
Great answer.
Yeah. Thank you. Well,
it's good to not be the smartest person in your circle. It's actually great.
Oh God, yeah. And I'm like, not like when someone is better than you, it's my favorite thing. When they're say something, you're like, never in a trillion years would my brain even come up with something that clever. I would never think of it that way. I would never say something, or I would like not keep my mouth shut during that part. Like it's really, really wonderful to get to that place for sure. Awesome. With the people that you get to bring on board.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Kristen, before we wrap up, talk to me about if you were going to have dinner with a historical figure from the past, who are you eating with and what on earth are you talking about?
Oh, I know who I would pick. Okay, so there is a woman from Ontario, which is where I live now, Canada. And she was actually the person to start franchising. So a lot of people think that it is Ray Kroc of McDonald's, and it is not. It is a woman by the name of Martha Matilda Harper. And she was born in the 18-somethings, early 1800s. And she actually worked as I think it was like a housekeeper for a doctor. And she had this really crazy long hair, like down to the floor, long hair. And of course, nobody has hair like this. And so I think she'd come up with this elixir and with the doctor's help or something like that. And she started to sell it. And this was also in an era where there were no, like women obviously couldn't vote. They were still property. So actually having them start a business was really unheard of. But she started a business. She called it the Harper Method. And it was sort of a bunch of different, so it was her elixir products, but then it was like, I don't know, the way in which she lived her life. I think it was breathing techniques, and I may be making this up, but it was like a more holistic version of how to live a very healthy life so that it's almost like internal out and you get this lovely hair for it. She called it the Harper Method. And it was really popular. And I think celebrities at the time, like Prince something of wherever, like lands that like don't even exist anymore, would come, and celebrities from Hollywood would come. And she actually, at this point, she lived in Rochester, New York. So they'd be like, listen, Martha, we love this, but we cannot be coming out here all the time. Like you got to open one up somewhere else. And she didn't want to do that, but she's like, what I will do is I will teach other women this method and they can go and start their own businesses. So she was very much about helping other women just work for themselves and own their own businesses and have that same sort of, freedom and thrill that she was having. So at the height of her reign, she had 500 locations all across the world. holy Dinah. It's amazing. It's amazing. So I think that since then, I think there's one location. I think the original is still in Rochester, but she was the very first person to franchise out her business model to women in the beauty industry. So it's very neat that I get to follow in her footsteps.
Hell yeah, with no modern day technology, also
Right?
500 locations.
Look, how are you?
Goodness.
Oh my God, here's her latest promotion. What are you sending it by mail? In your horse and buggies? I don't know. It's wild. Yeah, it's really wild.
It's amazing.
Yeah, she's incredible.
Kristen, thank you for your authenticity, for your uniqueness on this show. We are so beyond blessed to follow you in the 10 Spots journey as you continue to take over this planet on helping women feel like a 10. It's so
Yeah. Oh my God, I love it. Thank you so much. No, this is really fun. It's always such a pleasure to chat with you. So thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Kristen, what's the best way for people on this show to follow and connect with you?
I don't know. Instagram's good. It's Chris 10 spot, Chris and then 10 spot. Just slip in my DMs if you want to chat franchising and all things beauty bar world and 10 spot. It's a good place to find me.
Kristen Gale, CEO and founder of the 10 Spot. Keep being a rock star, and I'm sure we'll have you as a guest on here again.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. That's it for this week's episode. I hope you found it helpful. Be sure to head over to our site, local-business-hacks.com, to check out the show notes and send me questions or ideas for future episodes. If you want to grow your business, just like the people you've heard from here, follow Local Business Hacks Podcast and tune in for new tips, tricks, and tactics. Until next time, thanks for listening and keep hacking.